Welcome to the Unfiltered Friends podcast, where we humanize your favorite creators through their personal stories and then learn something from them. I hope you feel inspired by today's guest, and if you do, share it with someone who needs it. So without further ado, here is Unfiltered Friends. Hello, Unfiltered Friends. Today we have on Chloe of Chloe's Bluffcakes. Became recently obsessed with the giant cookies that she makes, delicious, except for the one that I wanted is, of course, sold out, which is all her fault. And she is a horrible human being, as she's probably told many times on the internet. Her story, I was struggling to find one line to take this story, like one direction, because the story is so complicated. But for now, let's say hello and tell people a little bit about your business.
Yeah, so I think I'm most widely known probably for the baking and the cookies. My business started back in 2020. I kind of started out by sharing with people my regular baking. We hadn't even touched into the giant cookies yet or shipping or anything like that. And then when I realized the audience that wanted a little taste of what I was doing, I tried to figure out something that was sustainable and shippable and had a shelf life, and the giant cookies came into play, and they have been my entire existence for the last 3 years.
But so you have like a whole bunch of other types of baked goods, but the cookies are what keeps you afloat.
The cookies are what keeps me afloat, and the cookies are what people across the United States and now Canada can enjoy. Because I'm sorry, I give it to the people that can ship a cake. I have not figured that out yet. We're at Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever heard of Portillo's? It's a Chicago-style hot dog chain, right? I grew up in Illinois, and the cake the chocolate cake they have there, people have it as their wedding cake. People are so obsessed with it, and I've asked my mom to ship it so many times, and the people at Portillo's are like, "We just can't do it."
Oh.
So, I mean, they have a chocolate malt, and they blend in an entire slice of chocolate cake into it.
That beat it.
Yes, well, that's Midwest, you know. That's kind of how it goes. So for you, I mean, obviously, like, you had your business going, you were doing all the stuff previous to your story, but I feel like your story is what really launched you into the consciousness of a lot of people. And I think an aspect that I think that's beautiful is I think we focus so much on how awful the world can be sometimes, but you had so many people hear your story and show up for you. So can you, it's really complicated because there's so many layers to it, but break down a little bit of of what happened and what the reaction of other people was to step up for you.
I wouldn't even say that the beginning of people showing, just a level of human empathy a lot of people aren't used to seeing was with my mom and the story surrounding her brain cancer. My initial launch on social media and just really getting to a place I never expected to be was when I was baking. So I was a marketing director for a nonprofit, and it's something I was really, really passionate about. And I told my employer I was pregnant when I found out, and 3 days later they fired me, and for absolutely made up causes, and it was entirely illegal. And it's funny because so many people will say to you, they can't do that, that's illegal. It's crazy, but they can. It is illegal, but they still do it.
So do you have, say someone's listening to this and they're pregnant and they're worried about losing their job, and that's a possibility. I've seen it happen multiple times. I mean, did you take any course of action after that happened?
I did. I ended up letting it go because it is incredibly time consuming. You have to understand that. But the EEOC, it's there to protect women or people who are pregnant from these situations. And it's going to take a lot of your time. We're talking over a year of showing receipts and taking meetings and taking phone calls and giving them screenshots that happened a year ago. And all the while, if you're trying to take care of a dying parent and you're trying to start a business, it's going to become kind of like a second job. And eventually I had to let it go.
It seems like a lot of people just understand that most people don't have the pockets of the time to see that through. So they're like, well, I'm going to do it anyway and roll the dice, I guess.
Yeah. And it's not incredibly easy. I will say that. You better have a really big grudge, and you better really, really want it. Because it can affect more than just you. It is more than just, the paycheck. It is also making an example of the people who think that they can treat you as disposable because you're pregnant. And I understand that. And I wish for simply that reason, because it got to a point where I was just kind of like, listen, I was struggling at one point. I am not anymore. I don't know that I really need to pursue this. They are still at heart a nonprofit. And despite what these people directly did to me, I don't want to take them down. Like, I don't want them to reflect on the entirety of what they're doing on a national scale. So I didn't want to do it anymore. I lost the heart to do it. I didn't have any fight in me anymore. But you better be ready to put a lot into it.
Yeah, and you hear nonprofit, and you're like, well, if someone's doing a nonprofit, they have good intention, they would never do something like that. But like, I don't really know many nonprofits that are actually like, they're yeah. I'm not trying to disparage, but like, humans will be humans.
Not everyone gets into nonprofit, especially on the top tiers. Because I was working underneath their CEO and their COO, or add some letters after C. I was working directly under them. Those were my direct managers. And those people are making a lot of money. And they have really fantastic benefits. Not necessarily everyone on the bottom, but there's more of an incentive for them to be in it for the wrong reason.
Yeah. But before all that, you were working in TV?
Okay. Yeah. So it was a pretty fast trajectory between like the ages of 17 to 24. I went to college 3 years in. My mom got sick for the second time with brain cancer. I started college actually when I was 17. And then fast forward, I didn't finish my degree in broadcast journalism. So I just kind of worked my way up from basically a producer's assistant. So you're just dropping mics down the back of people's shirts and moving the jib cameras around and doing all the schlep work.
I was a PA, so I get it.
That's so fun. And it's like, it's nothing but guys, too.
Yeah, I didn't enjoy that either. And I am a guy.
No, it's because it's kind of the worst and the worst in TV. People are real mean. You got to have thick accents. So then I started working, extra shifts and just trying to like sidle up to other producers and get them to teach me our teleprompting systems and how they were lining up all of their shows. And I learned enough to the point that I put myself out there and I was just like, hey, you guys are really, light on the weekends. I'd be happy to take those like midnight to 8 a.m. shifts and produce for you guys. And if you think you like it, maybe you could, I don't know, hire me as a producer with no degree. And they did.
Oh, wow.
But, it got more and more toxic, and I really had to let go of the idea that I wanted to be in TV. When I was a kid, I thought that baking was this fun little thing I'd done since I was like 12, but that's not a real career. My family's had always been very career driven. My grandfather was a nuclear engineer. My grandmother was like a Mensa level literature professor at University of Florida. And I had a very, very clear trajectory. My mom never really went that way. So I felt all the more competitive. I had what they call golden child syndrome.
Wait, what's that?
I felt like
what's golden child?
Golden child syndrome. Basically the immense pressure to overperform and be perfect at everything. Simply because, I watched my mom live. We lived in Section 8. We had food stamps my entire life. If she wasn't sick, she was unemployed. And the rest of my family, that set a very fractured emotional setting. So I was like, TV, I'm going to be really good at this. I'm a very strong writer. I'm going to be the next Anderson Cooper. But all of that, you end up burnt out by the time you're 23. Mm-hmm. You start college when you're 17 and you take the ACT 3 times. And by the end of it, I was just kind of like, this is not it. This is not what it's supposed to be like. This didn't do what I thought it was going to do. I thought this was going to make me so happy, and that making these people proud that I didn't really need their approval in the first place, it's never going to be enough. Mm-hmm. So I thought, where could I possibly apply my skills when I still have no degree? So I got into marketing, and that might as well have just been as toxic.
I would say almost more than TV.
Oh, yeah.
It's I don't know why. Maybe you know why.
anything that you're trying to sell is going to become toxic. That's just what it is. You commercialize people and it's toxic. So if you're working in marketing and you're on a team of people who's supposed to charm and flatter people into spending money with you, it's going to be toxic. You're never going to be charming enough. You're never going to be interesting enough to make enough money. It'll never be enough.
Yeah, some of the marketing techniques that you'd have to use sometimes. Also, like I like people as much as they can be crappy sometimes, but so the idea of having to figure out different ways to manipulate them to do what I want, it's very hard to do that and also maintain your sense of self or like who you are at your core. I feel like you have to compromise quite a bit.
Yeah. I think it's definitely, because I keep in contact with, and I know a lot of the people that I work with in TV. I never left Memphis. So now, mind you, I've probably only lived here like 7 years total now, but all of my professional career was here. So now they're walking into my bakery. I'm still friends with them on Facebook and everything. And I think they're all pretty surprised to see that I'm as open as I am on social media, because I definitely never was that way before.
Yeah. I think what you did is kind of what I did too, where you have an idea of, you kind of do what you were spoon fed. You're doing, like, you go to school. Like, I come from a small Midwest town. You go to school, you get a degree, you come home, live in your hometown, get 2.5 and a white picket fence, work somewhere that you watched the previous generation work, like rinse and repeat. What was the moment where that got disrupted for you, where you were just like, hey, none of this works. I'm going to move in this baking direction. What was that moment for you?
I think it was the amount of time that I actually ended up being alone with myself. So working midnight to 8 a.m., 5 days a week. Nobody showed up to the TV station to manage anything until our first broadcast. So nobody would show up till like 5 a.m. and we'd go on at 6. So that's 5 hours in the dead of night in a creepy news station, just like alone with yourself and your thoughts. And all of the worst things on the planet that I'm expected to be a part of. Like, I remember, must have been like 22 years old, and one night there was a club shooting going on, and my producer called me and he was just like, hey, somebody's actually live streaming that shooting right now. If you could just get on and start, screen recording it. And I was like, okay, well, with the sound and everything, can I just put it on one of those screens over there and just set it up to record, and I don't have to listen to it? And he was like, no, we need the sound and everything because they might say something. So essentially I was put in a position alone to watch, not to go into detail, but what you could imagine seeing in a club shooting, very up close and personal. And I don't know what anybody in their right mind is thinking, putting their phone camera on a body. That is somebody to a lot of people. And they're in this horrible, traumatizing position, and you put your phone, you're Facebook live streaming this, not because you're personally in danger anymore. It was the aftermath. And they didn't think it was unreasonable to ask a 22-year-old to watch this and to have to watch it and to record it so that they could later, blur some stuff out, but put it up for little bits on TV. And
it's dehumanizing.
It wasn't even the last.
It's like you forget that that's a person. And
I was like, what am I doing? I fell in love with journalism and being the next Anderson Cooper, because I was watching Anderson Cooper on the front lines during the war, on the ground with the people that we were necessarily fighting against. But he was there for a reason. He was telling a story. He was trying to show people things that they weren't going to see at home, because all they're watching is their local news, and it served a purpose. And I felt like it was heroism. And here I was screen recording someone dead. And I was just like, I can't do this. I cannot do this for the rest of my life. It's never going to get any better than this. The only thing that will change about my situation is they will start, paying me more? What number can you put on the way that I feel right now? So to kind of shake off stuff when I would go home, I was baking. I've been doing that since I was a kid, but I got really hyper-focused on getting through school and taking care of my mom, and so I'd laid off of it for a while. So I got back into baking again. And it was just something I could do during daylight hours. It's like I couldn't go out with any of my friends, and I couldn't ever get schmammered because I might get called in. So I was just baking all the time, baking and basically living at my local library. It was something very peaceful to me that I could get super hyper focused on. That took me out of, what was really a mentally unwell situation. And the more I moved into marketing, the more I was like on the side trying to go, the skills I'm learning working for this marketing firm, I think they could work for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like they wanted me to take over other people's Instagram accounts. And I'm like, I don't know anything about how to do that. And they're like, okay, so go learn it. Take little, what is it called? HubSpot marketing courses.
Yeah. They have all those certification things now.
Yeah. I was using what they were asking me to learn so that they could add that to their list of skills at their agency. I was using my Bluffcakes Instagram to kind of see if what they were talking about worked. People will put out a lot of advice on how to make social media more successful and how to make it work and how these algorithms work. And a lot of it's just noise.
But at this point, you were already selling the things that you were baking?
No, I was just sharing my hobby.
So there was no business. You were just sharing the things that you were baking on social media for funsies.
I had, created an Instagram. It wasn't on my personal Instagram. I created an Instagram as like a fresh start to see if any of these things worked for Bluffcakes. And every time I made a cake, every time I made cookies, every time I did whatever, I was sharing those pictures on Bluffcakes and trying to like not have like my mom and my friends and my family follow it, but try to get like other people interested in it and put myself out there and see if I was any good at this stuff. And I got hooked because I was like, I actually am good. People are interested in me, not because, or my mom's friends, but like because I'm actually good at it.
Yeah.
So it started going from there. And then the more that I was bringing stuff to work, people that I worked with in TV and then eventually in marketing got used to like, what'd you bring today? What's up? What you got? And the more that I would do that, that's kind of how I segued into, hey, my kid's got a birthday this weekend. Have you ever done like a llama themed cake? And I'm like, absolutely.
No.
It's not. I lied my answer.
As long as you get it done, you had to go make it the truth. You just wasn't the truth yet. Yeah.
And I was like, when do you need that? You need that in, hi, Robin. Robin's also on TikTok.
Just so you guys know, she's giving us time in her office. So if there's sounds happening, she's running a business. So. Oh,
Robin's got like 1 million followers on TikTok. She's just a shit poster, though. God damn it! She didn't even have to work for it.
I know. I see people who post stuff and they're like just reacting to something and getting all this views. I'm like, what am I doing? I'm trying to make a difference. And like, anyway.
No. Yeah. So I would ask them, what, you need that in 7 days? That's nothing. I would spend the entire 7 days trying to make it, and it would be just like so bad, and then throwing it away and starting over until I perfected it. And I would act like, oh yeah, it was nothing.
Yeah, that must have been pretty panicky though when you've been commissioned to do that and then you weren't accomplishing it. But I think that's an example. Like the first step to being good at something is being bad at it, and you gotta like practice your way up. But there's a moment that I want to go back to though, because you were like, I couldn't go out with my friends, and you just subtly dropped the commune bomb when we were talking beforehand. Can we get into that a little bit?
Yes. So let's see. My mom, she was a lot of different people. I'll honestly put out there something I don't talk about on my TikTok is that my mother was manic bipolar.
Oh.
And so anybody who was raised by a bipolar parent, especially if they had, really high highs and really low lows, is you knew a lot of different people built into one person. And it really just depended on, what season of life they were in. So the mom that I grew up with from like birth to, I think we moved when I was like 11 or 12. My mom was a very big, queer activist. She, very openly bisexual. I was raised, in the early 2000s, going to like a pride fest in Gainesville, Florida. You did not see another child. You really didn't, except for like my mom's little gaggle of friends and all those little like crunchy weirdos that she was in with. I mean, these are the kind of people that are still breastfeeding when their kid's 7 years old. It's not even that crunchy.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Did you know patchouli's deodorant?
No, it is not.
No, it is not.
Nope.
So that was my mom. And she was really big on taking me to protests and just all around very outspoken activist. But she really struggled with substance abuse. When I was probably 7 years old, my mom was a manager at a Joann's Fabric, and she used to bike to work 3 miles each way, and she got hit by a truck, and her bike pedal went in through her knee. So I used to walk myself several blocks to and from school at that age, and I got home, and I was used to letting myself in and kind of just waiting for my mom to show up maybe an hour later, and it started getting dark. It had been hours, and we didn't have cell phones back in that day. Mm-hmm. And so if I didn't know someone's number by heart, and I didn't, other than my mom's work numbers, and they weren't answering, and the one friend I knew, nobody was answering. Eventually, we got to almost my bedtime, and I heard some people outside, and my mom's friends were helping carry her in, and she had this massive cast on her leg. And they were like, oh my God, yeah, your mom's in this situation. She's got to take these pills every few hours. And yeah, okay, bye. And they left me. And that kind of started one of her slipperiest slopes was opioids. Mm-hmm. So I honestly didn't really catch on until I was a good bit older. But for the next few years, it was kind of off and on, getting evicted, moving to Section 8 out of our rental, not really going back to having a job, and just not really being present, kind of learning from 7, 8 on to take care of myself. And that was tough because sometimes, she was doing fantastic. She was a super parent. She was coming to all of my classes as a teacher's assistant. And then sometimes it was, all the rooms are kept very, very dark. Don't talk too loud to mommy. So that was tough. At around the age of 12 is when one of her closest friends who had been through similar situations said, hey, I'm moving to Tennessee. My father has a commune there. And I think we both need a fresh start. And I think you need to get clean. And we're just going to uproot everything and we're going to go. And so we did. And that pretty much meant going from this very queer, outspoken, protest level activist background to 300 acres on the outskirts of a very small population town called Selmer, Tennessee, where women did not work and they were subservient. There were about 18 houses that were really more built on trailers, and people lived 3 to 4 families to a house. Nobody locked their doors. All the children did childcare for all the other children. We homeschooled in a co-op level, in one building together, all grades were the same grade. Yeah.
Were there any religious aspects of it, or was it just?
Oh, yeah. It was deeply religious.
Okay.
So something that I think a lot of cults classify themselves as is that they are an intentional community that is non-denominational with the belief that the outside world is toxic and they don't integrate themselves into society. So there is no, they went as far as to have a small trailer that they turned into a grocery store on the property. TVs were not a thing. Music that was not either classical or Celtic, because we were all also taught Celtic dancing and made to compete.
You got a lot going on here.
Yeah, there was also a few times a year they would do rituals. So they did something that's in the Bible called an ingathering, where essentially they would do a giant, it gets real biblical. Basically, everybody camps instead of living in their own houses for a week. And they do a massive fire, the size of a house level fire. And you would throw anything into the fire that, was ungodly. So, it was suggested to me that all the CDs that I came onto the property with, B-52s and Go-Go's and all this eclectic music my mother had taught me to love, as well as my Kelly Clarkson album. Very offended.
Right. And you ended up on her show. Did you tell her that?
I did not, because how would you possibly go? It's so crazy. This one time, I was living in a cult and they made me burn your album. Gray, go, gray. So, no.
No?
Didn't go into that.
Hey, give it a shot, though. So did this help your mom? Because your mom was having substance abuse issues at that point, comes there to get clean, completely shifts her entire mindset, way of living to adapt to this place, correct? Did it help with her substance abuse issues?
I mean, yes, in the sense that there's no way to get them. You weren't going to be able to find pills anywhere near you. Like I said, it's on the outskirts of a town that was population 6,000 on a good day.
Yeah.
And maybe during soybean fest. But
soybeans smell so bad. I used to live in an area that grew soy. That smell will follow me for the rest of my life. So,
yeah, and then I went to college surrounded by soybean fields.
No.
Yeah, I can't get away from them. So in the sense that, she could not get, it was very much like cut and dry, clean break. She was clean, yes. But then we entered this like ultra religious era where it was like, we were never going to speak again about the fact that we lived with her partner Rhiannon for like a year and a half. She was like another mom to me. And that was over. That was over. We were never going to talk about that had ever happened. We weren't going to talk about the fact that most of these kids didn't know what sex was until they were well above the age of 18. And I knew everything.
Yeah. It's crazy to me.
Left a copy. What?
It's crazy to me, like how your head as a kid had to have been spinning because you had this whole way of being, and then it shifts to this whole other way, and you're looking to your mom for guidance on that, and were you just blindly going with what she was saying, or were you questioning things within yourself?
I had never been taught to blindly go with anything, but it quickly became apparent that was not going to be acceptable. Their structure for leadership there was, you want to guess? Men. 5, to be specific. In a property that was holding over 300 people at that time, there were 5 men who called on the shots. They decided where people lived. They decided, what their rules were about music, how women were supposed to dress, and when we arrived was when they were in their progressive era. Right? They had done the head coverings and the full length dresses and to the ground skirts and stuff. And now you could wear a Bermuda shirt that reached your calf. So it was some hot girl summer shit. Yeah. So they weren't afraid to say, this group of men were not afraid to say when introducing me into the mix with their children, I was seen as an issue. I was seen as a problem because I knew shit their kids didn't know. I could potentially put at risk the idea that many, if not all of them, did not know what homosexuality was. So I was seen as a little bit of a danger. And not going to say that they outright said that they would hit me, but they definitely made it clear that, like, in this property, in this style of life, we do corporate punishment with our children, and we will gladly do the same to yours if she talks back to you again. Because we had conversations as equals. It was always just me and my mom, and she never kept anything from me, even things that she should have. And they made it known that I was either going to fit in or I was not going to fit in and not like it. So I think I just learned to change myself enough and get quiet enough for that period of time to not put myself in danger, because it definitely felt dangerous. And it wasn't a safe place for women. It was not a safe place for women. I would not even 100% of the time say that it was a safe place for children, because that I knew of by the time I got out, which is why I graduated when I was 17 and went to college. I kind of just homeschooled as fast as possible to get myself out of there. But
so this is why you went to college at 17, yeah?
Yes.
To escape.
I was trying to get out. Yeah, I was trying to get out, and I was trying to get out as fast as possible. I was also the only person in the village at that time who was going to college or had ever considered it.
Mm-hmm. So you said there's 3 different predators.
There were, that I knew of by the time I left, is that there were 3 different predators who hurt children, and they did not tell the police. They just asked them to leave the property because that would bring unwanted attention to what they were trying to build there. And so they would just ask them to leave. And that was it. That was all that would happen. So it wasn't a fantastic place for kids or women. It was a great place for men. Let me tell you, it was a great place for them.
I mean, it seems like that was like one of the things they kind of built their own little playground, is what it sounds like. They don't have to answer to anybody. I'm sure God told them to do awful things to people, and you just went with it because of religion.
I did. I never saw myself as staying there. And I think, I will say there's this like level of safety that when you come from what I came from, which is like, oh shit, the power's out. Maybe it'll be on in 3 days. Like, mom didn't grocery shop again. I'm scared for my stability. There is this like appeal as a kid to be on this beautiful spread of property where like you get to ride horses, and it feels a little bit like summer camp. Mm-hmm. But there's a much darker aspect to it, which you are never going to be what you want to be. Okay. You're never going to be what you want to be. There's a very specific thing that you can be, and that is a mother, and that is in the kitchen. And that's just about it. You could work so they all supported this property by working at the exact same business. They would get on a bus together off of the property, go to work at this business, and come back on that bus. So there was no crossover. I think the moment that it really became real to me that this place was always going to be incredibly dangerous, and I had to do whatever it took to get out, is I was 15, and those 5 men who were the leaders of this place, called Rose Creek Village, by the way. I don't mind putting that up.
Rose Creek Village?
Yes. There were 5 men who were the leaders, and one of these leaders' sons started passing me notes in our little co-op situation, and basically just like going, oh my God, I'm so in love with you. And so just love bombing, that kind of shit. And so in love with you, so obsessed with you, all of this. And mind you, I was a very pudgy, curly-haired ginger with no eyebrows because makeup was not allowed, and a mouthful of gear. And dying for this moment, like this was everything to me.
Yeah.
And convinced me to meet him behind one of the pieces of property one night to make out, essentially. And I wasn't really comfortable with that, but I also wasn't accustomed to being able to tell anyone, even a guy my own age, no. So I arrived. He's got a flashlight and was basically saying like, yeah, no. Yeah, I will totally tell everyone on the planet I'm super in love with you the second you show me your boobs.
What?
Like,
what?
Pardon? Like, what just happened here? I thought someone was like totally in love with me and everything else. So I run away from that situation. Boobs intact. And I'm like, I cannot believe that just happened to me. Like, I thought that happened on the outside in the world where people are bad, and like everyone in here is good and has good intentions, and like that's not the purpose of this. Like, I'm not a leader's son. What the? So before I could tell anybody, he went and told on himself and told the situation completely differently and not creepy at all. And I was not allowed to leave my yard for 3 or 4 months. I essentially became all but the scarlet letter. Like, not only did everybody got told what I had done.
Wait,
I had done.
Can you tell the version of events that he told?
What he told is that I was totally obsessed with him. This poor, ugly, pudgy girl was totally obsessed with him and led him astray, as women do. Tells all this time in the Bible.
That is a conversation I have so often, and you still see these conversations. I can imagine it's kind of triggering to you. It's like, why is it someone else's job to cover up and not be tempting instead of the person who is having the attraction deal with their own internal things? Tell your sons to behave themselves, essentially, instead of tell your daughters to not tempt the sons. Like, that sounds like a them issue.
So they had a big old every adult in the village meeting about what I'd done, and my friends weren't allowed to talk to me. I wasn't allowed to leave the house, which led to a lot more baking, give you that.
So you were baking the whole time in the commune too?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that was, I think I really just kind of snapped, and I became the best kid on the planet. I spent so much time studying. I spent so much time completing all of his, it's really easy to race through your schoolwork if you're homeschooling. Mm-hmm. So completing all of my bars that I needed to complete and applying to every college I could possibly find. And, he really, I think it was grounded a little bit, but most of the time the tone was just like, she's a problem. She is trouble. She's nothing but a harlot. What disgusting worldly behavior, and this poor boy led astray. And, I thought a lot of violent thoughts.
So like you snapped, but your response mm-hmm. was to basically speed run the process of getting out of there. Were you conducting yourself the way that they wanted to so that they left you alone?
Oh my God. I asked them to baptize me. I asked to go to a mission trip where I spent 6 weeks in Kenya, Nairobi, and Nakuru. I was doing all of my schoolwork while I was there as well. I finished a high school level amount of my biology classes by myself while in Kenya. And I was constantly going you know what we should do? We should do a little book club, but we work our way through the books of Esther and the women of Rabbi. It goes on and on.
Yeah.
I did it all. And then I got accepted to, cause you have to have the permission of your leaders and of the men in your life in that kind of setup where if I'm going to go to college, they better approve. And right off the bat, they were unacceptable, not okay. And I was like, okay, well, 30 minutes away from this property, there is a private Church of Christ, which is women don't speak in church, no instruments allowed ever kind of situation, very locked down, private school, university. And I was like, I actually have a full ride. I've already been accepted and it's only 30 minutes away. So I'd be back all the time. And even then they were like, you're just going to end up a partying whore. Why would we let you do that? And my mom was like, no, she can go. My mom was coming out of this haze of putting herself down for that many years. I think that moment also really snapped her, where she realized that as safe as she felt and as provided as she felt, and where people actually made her feel like she was valuable in the world, even though on the outside she was on disability and she was just, a person who had a history of substance abuse, she was valuable there. She was a jewelry maker. She was a sewer. They make you feel so valuable when you're doing things for them. Mm-hmm. I think it finally made her realize just how little they do value me and how horrible they were willing to treat me. And so, she was fully behind my back with getting into college and getting myself ready and decorating my dorm and everything. I got out and I never went back.
Yeah. What happened with her? Was she still there?
She was there for maybe a month longer and she got out.
And then where'd she go?
She moved into what was essentially Section 8 again. It's what she could afford, but she wasn't willing to, because I made it perfectly clear to her. I was like, listen, I'm not going to make this known out there, but I'm not coming back. And you can do what you want, but I cannot come back here ever again. Mm-hmm. So you either need to find your way out or accept the fact that we're parting ways. I can't do this.
What was her reaction to that?
She's like, I'm out. Let's go. So
yeah.
And I think at that point, she also felt like she'd done her duty. She kept me safe. That's what she was trying to do. She was trying to keep me safe, both from her own mistakes, her own actions, our circumstances. And she did give up a lot by leaving because, she was just minding her business, doing her hobbies. Nobody made her work. She had a lot of friends and she was really happy there, but we had vastly different experiences. But she gave it up and she left and she moved into a not so nice apartment and I went to school.
Now, was there an adjustment period where you were kind of, because you've been disconnected from the world for how long at this point?
7 years.
So you were disconnected for 7 years. You go back into the world. What were some things that when you came out of it, you were surprised by, taken aback by, things that you didn't know about when you re-entered society?
Social media.
Yeah.
Social media a lot. I was, what was that? 2012 is when I got out and I was, that was probably peak Facebook time to be like, Chloe Joy is eating a burger. Yeah. Oh my God, the way those things haunt me in my Facebook memories.
I went back recently and looked at some of those things. I was like, oh man, like maybe I should just start over again because I don't need that evidence out there of me being that cringe.
The amount of pictures I deleted, oh my God. The learning curve of selfies, and just like I got situated with a really great roommate who was just like, oh baby, oh girl, we gotta work on whatever's going on here. Like, we cannot be seen eating in the dining hall together when you are dressing like this. And I'm like, what's up? You don't like Bermuda shorts? And when I tell you, I brought that man into a Goodwill, and he was like, "This makes me sad." And I'm like,
you can find so many cool things.
So much fun.
I did
Look
find
at this belt.
I did find someone's ashes one time, and that was a bit dark. Like, why do they not check those things? I'm not sure.
I don't think I would be checking much of anything if I worked there.
Yeah. Okay. So you're out. Your mom is out. At what point did brain cancer enter your life for your mom?
That actually happened while we were in the village. So first time before the end of her life, she, I'll say got it back 4 times. First time I was 16. And so it was shortly after all of that crap went down. And, I had left, they shipped me off essentially. They were trying to make a little satellite version of their commune in California. And somebody there was having a baby. So they wanted me to go help her and basically be like her little assistant. So they flew me to California so I would be there. Before I left, I was like, Mom, we got this little lumpy situation growing right here. And I've seen enough pictures of skin cancer and I know how your father died. So could you please get that checked out while I'm gone? And she was like, I don't know we're talking like a growth right here. She's like, it's not that big of a deal. It's probably fine. And I'm like, please get that checked out. And she got that checked out while I was gone. She didn't tell me. And I was standing in an airport in San Antonio when my grandmother called me, and we're not like close or anything. We weren't at the time. And she's just sobbing, telling me that like, hey, no matter what happens to your mom, just know that we're going to get you out of there. We're going to take care of you. You're going to be fine. I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was like, the brain tumor. Like, in the middle of an airport, I'm 16 years old, and I'm like, what are you talking about? What? Like, I thought this must have been some huge laughable mistake, but no, I started getting told basically over text what was going on. And I got picked up in Nashville and had to drive to Jackson, which was like 3+ hours of a drive with one of the men from the village, just in silence, seething. This was something that the men of the village and my mother decided was best if I waited to find out till I got back. And I was gone for like 3 weeks. So by the time I got there was about 2 days till they were going to do an invasive surgery. Basically, they immediately looked at her skin, knew that she had a skin cancer. And if this is melanoma can migrate. We're going to go ahead and give you a full scan. And they found a golf ball sized brain tumor. And had that been melanoma that migrated to her brain, could have been like weeks. And they were still going like, oh, she shouldn't find out till she comes back. She could have had weeks. And they still kept me there to do what they needed me to do and waited till I got back. So in my eyes, that's just despicable. You know, you stole time from me that I could have had very limited amounts of. So I got back. I went straight to the hospital. Someone was cutting her hair, like all of her hair off. She's got a lot of hair. And she had her first major brain surgery there. She did radiation. And then she basically had to learn to walk again. She had a lot of trouble remembering things. The kind of things that come back. You know, your brain fills the holes that they dig after some time. But and then I took care of her again. And after I left for school and everything, so that was maybe 3-4 years later, I only spent about a year at that first school initially, and then I went into a much different kind of school, University of Tennessee at Martin, where 80% of the school is Greek. And I was like, this would be a great idea. I know what I'm doing. God. Oh my God. That was a lot. I think I dated every sport in my first year. And Yeah, I joined a sorority. That was something.
What sorority were you in?
I was an 80 Pi.
My mom was an 80 Pi.
Yes.
And
well,
I was an ATO.
I don't know if we had ATO. Oh, no, we did have ATO at my school. And then they hazed someone so hard he lost an eyeball and they kicked him off the school.
Yeah, I was actually the founding father of my chapter because the former ATOs messed up for a while. So we were trying to build a better reputation. But generally, like when I said ATO, I was like, okay, here comes a story about how they hazed someone and got kicked off campus because it was unfortunately a common occurrence.
So 2 years of, Greek life, party life. I was hosting a show at our school radio station. My mom got sick again. And that's when I left and never ended up going back. So I guess it'd be the beginning of my junior year. I left because in that amount of time, while I was at school, my mom had left the village, of course, and then she met someone, and she had my sister, which most people go like, I know you said her mom had brain cancer. She did, but she only had radiation in her head.
Yeah.
Gamma ray radiation. So all the bits were still ticking, and she used them.
Was she surprised by this new child, or was it kind of a planned thing?
It was planned.
Oh.
I think my mom got a little bit more honest with herself years down the road, but at first initially it was like, what? That's crazy. And I'm like, you steaming little flute. You don't fool me. You don't fool me for 1 second. She was so excited.
Yeah.
So I was 19 when Charlotte was born.
And that's like, she's going through all of that and has a child. Mm-hmm. Like, I think a lot of people would have been like, hey, I have cancer and I'm going through all of this, maybe not bring a life into the world right now. Your mom seems like she kind of marched to a different beat than most of the world.
She really did. She didn't give two toots. She was going to live.
She was going to live her life.
She was always acting like she was not dying. Yeah. I'm not dying. She's either acting like I'm not dying or, I'm dying tomorrow. It's kind of a blend of both behaviors where it was just kind of like, and I'll do whatever I like.
It's kind of
she was the kind of person who saw medical stories just like hers. And she's like, and they lived till they were 85. So naturally the math is that I will as well.
Yeah.
Decided that.
It's like my mind goes two different ways. Like, good on you for like continuing to live your life, but also like, is that a responsible decision? Did you have thoughts like that within you, or were you just kind of like, that's her?
Oh, I was mad. I was very mad. And my mom was not somebody who didn't think she had a choice. Oh, my mother was very open about abortion and pro-choice and everything like that. This was her decision. She was not doing this because, she felt that she had to. No, she wanted her and she was excited and she felt like it was a new chapter in her life and she loved being a mom and she felt like she was in a completely different situation because, she was on a really good path at that time. She was really happy. She was in a great living situation. And she felt like, it was going to make her happy, but also that it was a good idea. So don't ask me why. Mm-hmm. But I was mad because I was scared for her. And I was like, and what happens when they find out you're sick again and you have a baby? Well, guess what? They did.
Yeah. That very possible thing became a reality. Like, cause your mom came back from it several times.
Yeah.
The last time was obviously the last time. What was the news at that point? That it was inoperable, that it was just terminal at that point, or was it always terminal?
It was not always terminal. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't her brain cancer that killed her, essentially. When you operate on the human brain enough times, it develops scar tissue. It fills in all those little holes of what they removed with what was explained to me by a surgeon. Don't hold me to this, because I'm no rocket surgeon here, but basically Jell-O. Yeah. Like brain Jell-O. And so it just fills in all the holes, but also scar tissue. When it was a long road to figuring out that it was the end, but when they figured out that we were coming to the end, which I still was pretty much denying. I was in denial about it throughout like a lot of the process. When I had to move her into a home because I couldn't move her into my home, it was temporary. It was basically just a physical therapy. It was fine. That was not the truth. And then I never should have brought myself down that road, but I did. When we got to a point where her neurosurgeon, like right hand nurse, I had asked her from the very beginning, I'm like, I don't need this to be pretty. I'm really not interested in it. I have a lot on the line. I have a little sister. I really need you to be perfectly honest with me well before something bad happens. And when we got to that point, she did. She called me and she was just like, I promised you that I was going to be really, really honest. This is how this works. You open up the human brain enough times, it just cannot handle anymore. There's too much scar tissue. That scar tissue is growing. That scar tissue is putting even more trauma and stress on her brain. It's basically fighting for room. We open it up and we remove that, it's just going to happen again. And every time that you do that, your mom ends up a little bit less of herself and more confused. And honestly, I'd be hard pressed to find anybody willing to operate on her again. It's just going to cause her pain. So it wasn't, she phrased it like I had a choice to put her in hospice. I did not. There was no choice. But the tone is appreciated. I can look back on that and appreciate that her tone was like, I feel like this is the best course. There was never going to be another course.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, the decision was, make her comfortable, tell her the truth, and let's try to not make this all a fight to the end. Like, because you don't deserve to have to fight to the end. I know that's a real rah sentiment for people with cancer. They're like, no, be a fighter, be a fighter, be a fighter. You don't deserve to have to. Sometimes you want to be done, and you deserve to be done if you fought that long, because it's so painful.
Yeah.
And when you're constantly focused on a better outcome than what's right in front of you, you're never actually going to be there for the last amount of time that you have.
Yeah. And how did your mom take this news when they let her know?
I did not get to tell her. I'm going to stay mad about that till I die. But essentially, some green ass doctor, fresh out of school, and I put my eyes on the guy at least one time and violent thought. I'm like, how fucking dare you?
Not your first time.
Hey, just, let's get this over with. Rip the Band-Aid off. You are dying. You're going to hospice. Sorry, please. Didn't even put it that way. It was just like, yeah, you're going to hospice. Your family will be here probably like an hour. We'll see you. And fucking leave.
Yeah.
By the time my grandparents got into town and went to go see her, because again, I'm trying to bake, I'm trying to open a business and run a business. So I couldn't be there every minute of every day, but I was there every day at some point, some hours. And my grandmother just called me and she was just like, they just told her. Some doctor apparently walked in here, the really young one that you've seen before. And yeah.
That's why
that was unacceptable.
It's so important. Like, if you have the ability, I was with my grandma for the last 2 weeks of her life. And I'm so glad that I was, because no one cares about her the way that I care about her. And some messages got confusing, and I made sure I was there to let them know, like, hey, this is what's going on. What you said was incorrect, because they didn't pass information appropriately. And I realized that they're dealing with a lot of other people. But if you have the capacity to advocate for your family member, it's just so massively helpful, because sometimes you run into people like that guy.
Advocating for my mom was something that consumed the last year and a half of her being alive for me. And that was probably the most disparaging way I've ever felt about humanity in my life, was realizing how little people just do for others that they can see are in so much pain or are mentally not well or not there. And she wasn't her full self for the last portion of her life. Again, you can't open someone's brain that many times and expect them to stay the same. There was a lot of things she struggled with. And physically, she couldn't walk at the end. And it's incredible how little they will do and how much they will overlook and how poorly they will treat other human beings. There was a lot I had to do to add.
When did the conversation start about you raising your sister?
I can't say that we ever actually had a full-on conversation about that, because Charlotte does have a father.
Mm-hmm.
Charlotte has a father, and not a father who has ever had her on his own. not a father he's not a bad father ever. I would never speak poorly of him, but his life is just not fit for having her all the time. And throughout taking care of my mom, it was me. So if there's anyone who's going to be there with her while teaching her, what death is, teaching her what's happening to her mother, having to tell her that mom is not coming home again. This is it. And giving her the kind of emotional support that she would need from quite literally the only other person on the planet who's going to hurt as much as she did. It was an obvious choice that she would stay with me. And I think it was just something unspoken between me and my mom that I didn't realize until I found the recording this past week or so in her phone. And I didn't realize she really had intended, because I just did it. Quite honestly, I just did it. I never knew if she intended on me to have her, or if she wanted Charlotte's father to have her, or what she thought was going to happen, because again, she was scattered and she wasn't herself all of the time, and she got really sick really fast. But that was a really great confirmation to me that I was doing the right thing, and that I was going to give her what she knew she wanted Charlotte to have. And that I am doing it. Yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about that? So that voice memo was something you knew about, but then put off listening to, correct?
Her entire phone. I didn't know that there was going to be anything. So
you just discovered this recently then?
I did.
To be honest with you, while I was researching you, listening to that ugly sobbing at my computer, I can't imagine how tough that was for you to hear. For those who haven't heard it, can you describe a little bit of what she asked of you or said to you in the memo that you did share?
Yes. She had organized, there's a number of recordings. I haven't actually listened to them all. But there's a number of recordings that I found in her voice memos. And this one was titled Just for Me. And I kind of lost it before I even opened it, because I was waiting for something like that. Mm-hmm. I had her phone, and it got lost a couple times, and I just lost my mind. We moved houses the same week that we opened our bakery, and it got left with the previous owner, like on top of the cabinet. Oof. And I lost it. I had a panic attack.
Yeah.
And because I was saving it. I was saving it for something like this. And I was just like, I kept putting it off, and I kept going like, oh, let me charge it. I charged it so many times, and it died so many times because I just couldn't do it. But, there was no letter when she died. There was no will. There was a giant mess to clean up. Mm-hmm. And a lot of responsibilities to take care of. But there was no last letter. There were no last words, and she couldn't talk when she died. I was really hoping all this time that there was going to be something for me. But I was also too scared to open it, because what if there wasn't? What if there was actually nothing? I knew my mom as a lot of things, but something she also could be was forgetful. Mm-hmm. And not terribly thoughtful sometimes. And as much as I ever loved her and took care of her, there is still an underlying tone of trauma that happened between us.
Yeah.
And unresolved feelings due to her behavior. So I knew that was definitely a possibility, that there might be this long letter to a friend and nothing for me. But there was, and I opened it, and she essentially said to me that she was so sorry. She was so sorry to leave this in my lap, that she knew better than to have Charlotte. Wow. But that's just how much she loved her, is that she knew how much it would cost her. And she still wanted her. She still wanted her so bad. Mm-hmm. And I mean, she was obsessed with Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And there are so many photos. Mind you, there might be 10 total of me as a kid. So
yeah,
fight her over this. But throughout the first whole year of her life, every month there was a different picture theme. She's got the Easter bunny pictures where she's in a basket of eggs, The girl's her life. And she said, I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry to have left this in your lap. But I'm still proud of you. And I I want you to do everything. I want you to travel. And she laid heavy on that in her message simply because I have had my nose down for so long. I've been working since I was 14. There's never been, I didn't do the gap year life. I've been working and trying to create something for so long, so deep in it. There was never a portion of my life where I focused on myself. Because even though I am following what is essentially my dream, it costs me everything. And she knows that, and she watched every portion of that, and she knew how much this was going to cost me, but how much I felt like I was building and that I was doing something worthwhile for once. But she really wanted to tell me that, you have to get out. You have to actually live your life. I'm 28 years old, and I have a lot to show for it. But that isn't really the most important thing. And I can tell you, my mom did a lot more in her life than I will probably get done by the time I'm 40. Simply that was because she could.
Yeah.
Because she could, because she wanted to, because she didn't live tethered by anything. And in particular, Mexico, because that may seem like a random thought to split through a person with brain cancer's mind. Everything's a butterfly.
Yeah, why would she talk about Mexico so much?
Because I told her, she went backpacking with me in Mexico when I was like 2. And I always told her, I was like, I would never. Listen, I would never. As a mother and a responsible middle-aged person of 21 years old, I would never. I love to tell her how I would do things differently than her. And I have become a very rigid, responsible parent. But fuck it. That's what she did. It's what she wanted to do, and she loved it. But no, we definitely had multiple conversations. I was like, and the last place I am taking my white ass to is Mexico. Well, unfortunately, I've already booked a trip now. So.
Yeah, where Mexico?
I can't.
Oh, it's a secret.
It has a law in it. My husband has a friend who is literally a manager of a resort that is within 10 minutes distance of waterfalls, which she also referenced. So that kind of just fell into place for me really quickly. But I think her final message was just, take care of Charlotte, do all the things I would do, and raise her the way that I would, which I am trying to. I really am. Try raising an 8, nearly 9-year-old girl, though. My God, they're mean.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I could tell her, I'd be like, listen, I'm trying, girl, but this bitch has hands.
She's mean.
She's mean.
Yeah.
She's mean. So it was a beautiful message, and honestly, I talked to my therapist about it before I went to her phone at all.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, why have you been putting this off for so long? It seems like it's doing me more damage and anxiety than just opening it. And I was just like, because what if there's nothing? What if there's literally nothing? What am I supposed to do if that's it? It felt like I hadn't really closed everything. There was still so much more I could discover. And things she said I'd never heard if I just never opened it. And he was just like, that's not, you're never going to get any closer to losing the panic attacks that I have because of grief and the trauma and finding, some closure. If you don't open it, just do it. So she died April 12th and I opened it April 12th. And, yeah, it kind of destroyed me.
Yeah. I mean, I was looking at the dates and I was like, oh my God, I'm interviewing her right around the anniversary of her mom's death. Look, I know that you have, I don't really know you. And I always try to make sure that I don't overstep, but I need to give you a bit more credit than you're giving yourself. Because from listening to you as a stranger, you had so many moments and a right to be angry. And you have your anger, sure, but pass that on to Charlotte. Pass up, because there's things, it sounds like that you probably would have liked some of the things that Charlotte got provided for when you were younger. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah.
You have every right to be angry about that. And some people, and I always say this, and you got 2 types of people who have experienced a lot of trauma and want to make sure no one else goes through it. and people have experienced trauma say, this is how people deal with it. You're going to have to deal with it now. And you chose a high road. And like, if it's weird coming from a stranger, I'm so proud of the road that you took, because you're breaking cycles of trauma. You have shouldered so much. Like, I'm sitting here dumbfounded. And on top of this, like, you're getting married, you're starting a business, you're baking while pregnant. Like, you are a superhuman. Like, that was the one thing that I took away. I was like, I don't know where this conversation is going to go, but I know I'm talking to a really special person. And I hope that you recognize that about yourself.
Well, thank you. I think definitely a theme of what I'm working through in therapy is that I don't really have a sense of what's enough. When you come from nothing and everything's so hard, I don't really know when it's ever going to be enough. If I don't start learning that the goal in life is not happiness. The goal in life is not making yourself as happy as possible all the time. The goal in life is contentment.
Yeah.
And until you're content with yourself, and until you're content with what you've achieved, and you're kind enough to yourself to go like, it's enough.
Yes.
This is done. It's enough. Then you're never going to actually be what you think is happy.
Yes.
I'm working on it.
I've done a lot of therapy. I did mostly EMDR therapy. Have you experimented with that?
I did about 5 years ago.
Yeah. It's really ouchy. That was an ouchy type of therapy for me, at least. Drudging up all that stuff was really hard, but it was freedom. But by the end of it, I think, I don't know. But what I found is through that process of therapy and all these self-help books, it's like, at what point do I get to enjoy who I am? If I'm always looking to be this better person, when do I get to enjoy who I am now? At some point you have to be like, hey, I'm a pretty dope person. I'm going to keep working on myself, but like, this is enough. You know, I had the same thing with like, I've been doing social media for 16 years. I've been since the birth of this industry, and I thought I would hit these numbers and I would hit this income amount and I would hit, all these goals, and I hit every single one of them. And I was like, that wasn't it at all. And that is a sobering experience. Do you identify with this?
I do. I think, something that always surprises me, because it surprises other people. And I try not to take it personally based on my face, that the internet thinks I'm 30-something. And I'm like, excuse you, I'm a spring chicken. I'm young, fresh, hot summer girl. Thank you.
Yeah, you are.
Rude?
Yeah, I say that.
But people are always, if I have these conversations, or I did a lot of interviews right around the time that we opened. Did a lot of interviews right around the time of Kelly Clarkson show and the whole birthday party story and everything like that. The conversation always ends up, okay, and you're how old? I'm 28. And they're like, oh my God. And, I thought I would, because when I was 17 and I was starting what I thought was going to be a very long broadcast journalism career, I was just like, it's going to be so impressive when I'm so much better than all these bitches. And I'm yay old and I have everything I want. And now, on paper, I've everything that I ever wanted as a kid to grow up, below the poverty line. And all they ever wished for was, to not have to worry about there being food, or, being able to shop somewhere other than Goodwill, or things like that. And now I can do so much more than that. And it's never going to be enough unless you actually feel like you're enough.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't have the same extensive experience that you did, but in the process of trying to grow what I have now, I was homeless twice. And that I didn't realize until I started going to therapy that like that lack, and I'm not talking about homeless, like just like hanging out, couldn't afford Starbies. I was on the street in LA. You don't realize how much that sticks with you and messes with your relationship with what is enough, messes with your relationship with money, messes with your relationships with other people, because I don't know if it was the same for you, but all I could think about was never going back to that sidewalk. That's all I could think about. And it causes you to live in lack, and it causes you to you end up having less because you're so obsessed with having more. At least that was for me.
I do. No, I don't. I am infamously, in every relationship I've ever had, I am the person who doesn't spend. I can't shop. I can't do it. There's too much anxiety tied around like no, you really shouldn't spend that. I can't buy clothes on Amazon. I can't, I'm trying to go hoe out at a Renaissance fair in like 2 weeks. And I've been circling the drains around, what I'm going to wear because I refuse to buy anything unless it's the cheapest thing possible. I'm like, but that's still fair. I've worked too goddamn hard to continue acting this way. For the first time in my life, I spent $280 on things only for me at Target.
What?
This was like 2 weeks ago. I know. And I was just like,
treat yourself.
You know what? I'm gonna therapist myself right now.
Yeah.
Like they should have a rose gold Amex. I can do that. But I literally will still go like, oh, it's full price. Put it in the cart.
Yeah.
And it takes so much inside of me to just do that. Just buy it. Just be fine. It's fine.
Yeah.
Everything will be fine. And then I come home and the first thing I do is I justify all my purchases. Okay, but I really needed this because my husband was just on the other side of the room like, bro, I don't care. I'm like, I know you don't care. You grew up where you grew up.
Yeah.
Your parents were well-to-do. That man literally, I will refuse to buy Starbucks. I haven't bought Starbucks I don't buy Starbucks. Mm-hmm. I might buy it once a year. And this man is like, hey, I bought a $7,000 golf cart for the neighborhood ride. Just because. And it's like, good, how do you live with such freedom?
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't be me.
But that had to have been quite the journey for you two, coming from such drastically different backgrounds, but you made it work. Or you're making it work, or I'm making assumptions.
Am I on?
You are on. Yeah.
Well, now I'm connected to the computer.
Well, we're getting towards the end anyway, so we'll just go with it for now. Guys, this is how it works. If you ever want my guests to be able to have nice microphones, make sure you support me on Patreon, patreon.com/unfilteredfriends, and I can send microphones to people, but we ain't got it like that yet. This is what you're witnessing right now is called a passion project. It doesn't make me any money, and I'm barely getting by. But I quit everything that made me money for the sake of my own happiness, which, as someone who also lived a poor life at some point in their life, it's not a good time for me. But I haven't died yet. So we'll just go. What
more could you want?
Look, every day's a bonus day. I've had several near-death experiences, and the fact that I'm still here, hey, we're making it. We're doing it. We're doing it big. I think it's hilarious that I started this whole thing and I had like some notes and we spent the whole time talking about like cults and stuff like that, or communes. But that's what I love. That's what I love about this is like, you never know which direction it's going to go. That's my style. I like just letting it unfold how it will. But I do want to talk a little bit about your baked goods. So what was the moment like where it started to really take off for you and become a business?
God, I would have to say that it was a bit of a year-long thing that just kept building on itself. My first occasion was when I was sharing my story, my baked goods, and telling people what had happened to me, which I kind of did as soon as it happened. As soon as I got fired after telling them I was pregnant, I was like, guess what? I'm not dropping any names because I'm not stupid.
Yeah.
But yeah, this happened to me. And, the outrage around that.
Oh yeah. Well, it's disgusting.
It's disgusting. But people were really, really involved. And, well, how's this going to pan out? What are you going to do next? And I was like, I don't know, man. I bought a house 3 months ago. And I'm pregnant. And it's like, so I got fired at the end of November, which was Thanksgiving. So I'm like, and I got to buy Christmas presents. This is so crazy fun. And so sharing all of that and just letting people know that, like, I'm panicking. I'm quite literally panicking 100% of the time. Got people really invested in just my story. And as a side note, they're like, oh, and she bakes. That's so crazy. Which I was doing locally. So like the pre-orders and stuff and Thanksgiving baking that I was going to do, I was like, guess what? I told you guys there was a cap. Forget the cap. I will kill myself on my kitchen floor.
I need to make money.
Bake whatever you want. And I did. And it flew off locally. But the more people were watching on my TikTok, because I had maybe like 150,000 followers at that point, the more people were watching that on my TikTok, they were just like, man, I wish you could ship something. And that's where I like started spiraling into like, okay, don't miss this opportunity. How can I ship something? It has to be shelf, blah, blah, blah. It has to be sustainable. I have to be able to afford it. How am I going to do this? So I started messing around with the big cookies, which is something that I used to just oversize making cookies all the time. The second that I was messing around with that for local sales and going live while I did it, and people were showing interest in like, oh man, you can totally ship these. I was like, oh my God, I could totally ship these. That's crazy. From that point on, getting it from my kitchen to all 50 states in Canada was about 6 weeks. In 6 weeks, I did what I needed to do to supply packaging, supply nutrition labels, follow all cottage food laws because it was coming out of my house, get permits, and launch. I launched New Year's Eve of 2020. So I put maybe like 24 cookies up on my website, and I told my followers about it, and they were gone. And I was like, that's so crazy. Next time I'm baking, I'm going to put the amount up on my website and go live, and you guys tell me if you want me to talk to you about the cookies. And I did, and they were gone. So I kept doubling up on the amount that I was offering. And I mean, like doubling up to the point I was like, if all of these sell out, I don't have them. And I also I stopped putting a cap. So the first occasion where it really went haywire was in February of 2021. So I was probably like 7 months pregnant at this point. And I went live, and simultaneously a video of mine was going viral. And I messed up by not putting a cap on my website. And so I'm baking and I'm going live and I'm talking, and the viewership is growing on my live. It's in the thousands. And I'm like, this is so crazy and fun, guys. And I can see my phone. I'm getting a phone call over and over again from my husband. And I was like, oh my God, leave me alone. I always want to talk. I want to talk to you. And so he starts hitting me up over the Alexa in our house. And he's like, no, you need to pick up your phone right now. You have to get off of live. And I was like, what just happened? So I was like, sorry guys, you must be an emergency. I get off the live, and he calls me, and he's just like, you just sold $15,000 worth of cookies that we don't have. I was like, what? I was fucked.
Whoa.
To put it lightly, I was fucked.
Yeah.
So that's about, that equaled out to be like 900 orders. And mind you, my website still said like 3 to 5 shipping days. And I was like, oh.
Well, that's a lie.
I was also running all my own email marketing and everything because I had, a background in it, so I could. But I immediately put out an email where I was just like, kind of fucked up. Hope you guys can appreciate that I did not anticipate this. Everyone was so understanding.
Oh, it's so good.
I mean, we got flooded with people going like, I really don't care if they show up a year from now. We're fine. It took me 2 months. I closed down the ability to order. It took me 2 months, and I refunded 2 orders. In all of that mess, 2 orders. And I got 900 orders out. It was thousands upon thousands of cookies. I can't tell you how many, but I knew that it was 1 minute. I was like, man, I hope I can, pull my fucking weight in this house when we've always been a 2-income household. And what the fuck are we going to do? To having $14,000. And
wow.
That I would say is the moment that made me. But it became all the more important not to lose traction. So I'm getting wildly more and more pregnant. I am working like 12 to 14-hour days on my feet. Everything is swollen. Everything is swollen.
I can imagine.
And I moved into a commercial kitchen at that point. So I was renting commercial kitchen space. So I was able to do more things than I was before. Still was only me. And my husband had a full-time job that was very demanding. And it was definitely a really miserable way to ride out the worst portion of your pregnancy, which is just like walking death those last couple of months. So to be pulling those hours and doing really, really physical hard labor and really, really late hours, incredible. Don't know how I did it. Would never do it again. One and done. Yeah. The shop was closed. But I took off the last 2 weeks before I gave birth. I gave birth to Theodore in our house, actually. And 2 weeks later, I was back on my feet. And that first live is when I came back is probably the one people remember the most out of anything that I've shared relating to the cookies, because I'd also just done a custom order for Jessica Simpson. So that was a really big thing for me too. All of these things were happening at once.
Yeah.
And multiple viral moments that were building up to me being like noticeable for cookies. and something I really never anticipated for myself. I had thought of myself as like an intelligent, educated woman who became the cookie lady real quick.
Yeah.
And that'll hurt your ego.
Yeah.
I learned to grow into it, and I'm working on it. I'm working on loving that people call me that. But 2 weeks after having Theodore, I just started wearing him and working again. And I did my first restock, and I was incredibly afraid that it was just going to totally flop, because where's the interest? They watch me struggle. People love to watch people struggle. They don't necessarily love to watch you succeed.
Nope.
And I was very scared that I was no longer struggling, but I was. Hello. I just gave birth and I was back on my feet. And so I went live and I was going like, hey, here I am again. And the viewership was building again. And I was like, okay, so I'm not totally uninteresting. Did you see this baby? I literally just pooped him out in this room 2 weeks ago. And I did. I was in my office. So we kind of built viewership, but I still was afraid. I was like, okay, in like 10 minutes, I'm going to drop all the cookies. They sold out in 8 minutes. And I'm talking like 1,000 cookies.
That's crazy.
Sold out in 8 minutes. And I'm just like sobbing on live and thanking people and telling people like, oh my God, I can't believe you actually did that. And they kept showing up. And it kept going from there. Maybe 8 months later is when I started my book deal. And
you have so much happening.
Yes, I wrote a book, and my book, I actually got a book deal with one of the big 5. And like I have a book that will be in Barnes and Noble and Target and Books A Million. And like,
we love that.
That's so weird for me. That's so weird for me. But I did have a little bit of a jump scare at first, because I was going to publish underneath my married name, Chloe Sexton, but there's a very spicy novelist, not the good kind.
Oh.
I'm not talking like Bridgerton, Julia Quinn, the good stuff. I'm talking like my stepbrother.
Look, I get it. So actually the person who you kind of remind me of a little bit with the pregnancy story is she started her own company. She ended up selling it to DreamWorks for like $15 million. But when she sold it, she brought in all these new people to keep the organization going, got pregnant. And when she came back, she was essentially not a part of her own organization. So she got into the romance novel world and had me read one of those stories. The foreplay only exists in real life because it did not exist in the books that I was reading. I was mortified. I was like, whoa. That
is so funny, because I'm listening to Bridgerton and all of like the off branches of the people who write with her consistently every single day when I'm in this kitchen. I have no shame.
Yeah.
But I did not want to be mixed up with this particular brand of stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So we just put my maiden name back in there. Yeah. And now, after a meeting with the people at Goodreads, hopefully we've separated authors.
Yeah.
We were falling under the same, like we were the same person. And I'm like, I swear to God, please don't do this to me.
So I think one of the overarching things about this is your perseverance, your ability to keep moving forward in the face of things that a lot of people will never face in their life. If somebody was just struggling, like one struggle after another, it feels like, you're getting dogpiled on. What did you do in your mind in order to keep moving forward in the face of all of that struggle?
What keeps me going?
What happened in your mindset to keep you moving forward when you could have absolutely just laid down and had a pity party?
I think a lot of it has always been for me contingent upon who needs me. I don't think I've ever made a lot of choices about keeping going because I saw a really bright future for myself, or that I, had things that I really, really wanted. If I'm honest with myself, I think a lot of it was survival based. A lot of the way I was raised and the way that my mindset always was survival. But there really has never been a moment in my life where somebody didn't need me. Somebody didn't need me to keep it together. There's never been a season of my life where I just went wild, or I, was irresponsible, because somebody always needed me. Either my mom needed me, or my sister needed me. And if my sister didn't need me, then now my son needs me. and my employees need me. I don't think I've ever actually had, and that makes it sound like a prison. Like, oh my God, you poor thing. But I think I like being needed. And I think I like being the responsible person who provides, love and a happy life for my kids. I think what I've found that I enjoy most about myself and about owning this business and making it what it is that I've built this family within my team, because I don't have a family. I don't have anybody anymore. I don't have siblings other than my sister. I don't have any parents. That's it. It's just me now. And, but what I'm capable of building by the safety that people find when they realize that if they need me, I will be there. I think that's something that became a part of my personality that, yeah, it sounds like I had it really hard and really bad, but I think I finally like who I am. And I think I like that I'm needed and that I'm dependable and that my kids are never going to have to worry. My kids are never going to have to worry. They're never going to feel unsafe. They're never going to see me choose anything other than them. And I think that's all that really matters to me at this point. I don't think I care as much about liking myself or really even where I go in life as much as I like protecting my sister.
Yeah. I mean, you didn't have that. So you provide it for other people. And that's, again, that is a conscious choice that you made and a testament to the content of who you are as a person. So, you all right? Good.
Sometimes you don't realize things you know about yourself or that you appreciate about yourself until you say them out loud.
And that's one of my favorite parts about doing this is I watch people fall in love with themselves, because I think too often, and I do this too, you're just like constantly in motion. You don't take time to like sit back and be like, holy balls, what did I create here? What have I done? What have I overcome? And you just keep going. And it's just like, yeah, the second I started doing all this research about you and like versing myself on your experience, I was just like, oh, I'm so excited for this. This is about to be the best. And it was. Yeah, no, look, when you've experienced a lot of trauma, you kind of like, I don't know, you get used to hearing these stories. They don't traumatize you any further because you're kind of like at capacity. So you just listen to someone else and identify with them instead of take on their trauma, It
is nice to hear a different side of what I provide for Charlotte, because in her eyes, I'm the worst person on the planet right now.
Oh, okay? Yeah. How old is she now?
I'll tell you how soon hormones kick in. She's traumatizing me.
How old is she?
She's 8.
Yeah. I mean, like, I would love to tell you it's going to get easier, but I don't think it's going to.
She's terrifying, honestly. I'm worried about my little soft boys. My boys are because I have my bonus kid too, Mason. So I just forgot my husband's name. When Tyler and I got together, he already had a son. What is that guy's name again? Stinky weirdo that I tied myself to. He already had a son, and Mason and Charlotte are a month apart. So people are always like, yeah, you got this skinny, gangly little snaggle-toothed asshole that is my sister. And then you have this delicate, sweet, wonderful child who's very full-formed and who will ask you at the end of your day, how was your day? If you had a time machine, what would you go back and change about your day? And I'm like, stop. And Charlotte, meanwhile, is like, I think that we should tell everyone my name is Charles, because if they look at me and I tell them my name is Charles, they have to decide whether or not they want to call me a girl or a guy, and that would be offensive either way. And I'm going to act offended either way.
Oh my God. Please protect. Okay, what you're describing for the soft boy in your life, that was me. Protect him with everything in your heart, because I am a testament to how often people will try to destroy that. I never gave up on it, but it was a rough go.
He is emotionally excelling as a person, and Charlotte taught kids at her brand new school to say, I'm a dick. Like a bunch of them. Oh. She's digging in the woods for animal skulls and showing them to me. Diseases, please stop. No, I'm not worried about her. She's fine. She's just an asshole.
She'll have the world by the balls.
She really will.
So, okay, if people are inspired by you and want to reach out to you, where's the best place for them to do that?
Instagram, honestly.
Instagram, which is Chloe Bluffcakes.
Just Bluffcakes.
Just Bluffcakes. Yeah, searching for you was a journey initially. I did find your personal Instagram, but I didn't get weird. So.
Oh God, I never post on that anymore. It's all about business now.
Yeah, well, there's only so many hours in the day, you know? Well, thank you for being on. I appreciate it. This went a lot longer than I thought it would, but it went a lot of places I didn't know existed. So thank you for being so.
I apologize for the technical difficulties, but I thank you for your patience. And I wholeheartedly agree that if your audience wants things like this not to happen anymore, they should support you.
Yeah, thank you for that support. Yes, and they do. And I'm definitely going to put in an order here. I'm trying to not.
You're going to make me put it in order because my beats are taped together, by the way. I got to get with it.
I am putting in an order so you can buy new beats that aren't taped together. But yeah, thank you for being on Unfiltered Friends. I appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.